Yeah, so we've done a national anthem, etc., etc. Okay, welcome everybody to the East Ilsley Parish Council's virtual meeting of 9th of March. If we go straight to the agenda, to receive and consider for acceptance apologies for absence from members of the council. Have we got any, Fen?
I haven't received any, but we are still waiting for Brendan and Stephen to turn up.
But Brendan, we think, is more technological. Steve, we're not sure. Okay, so if you can keep your eye on the waiting room. So let's move on to any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests or non-registerable interests by members or the clerk, and to consider any requests for dispensation. Has anybody got anything they would like to declare?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Item 3, to receive questions or comments from members of the public regarding items of the agenda or representations from any member of the public who has declared a personal interest. And I guess, Fen, most of this, unless we've got some questions, will probably relate to the planning issues, yes?
Yes.
So have we got any questions from any members of the public? Firstly, don't think so. The world's obviously going well. Planning then. Would anyone like to offer any representation? Should we go in order, I guess? Pedro, would you like to say anything about your planning that will sort of preempt the application?
I don't know if you guys have seen any documentation or anything like that. I can explain. This is putting a garden office at the back of my garden. It's not a building. It's just it's a shed. It's actually the size of a shed. And normally, I believe, and one of the reasons why we wanted to go for planning permission was, well, nobody was sure about the size and what is permitted and not permitted. But effectively, as far as I know, and that's me reading the documentation I gathered, I think because it's beyond 20 meters from my main house and it's going to be placed at the back of my garden, has to follow this regulation from the areas of outstanding natural beauty. And apparently when it's 10 square meters of surface or more, has to go through planning permission. Mine exactly is 10 square meters. So I didn't want to risk building it and then having any issues. So I decided to go for planning permission, because when I was asking at the council, they couldn't tell me. They said you have to go through planning permission or go through this apparently a halfway house, which is some sort of a questioning, which takes even as much time as the planning permission. So I decided to go for the safe option and go for that. But there is a 10 square meter surface shed. Is 2.5 meters high, which is the height of a shed, and it's planned to be a garden office for ourselves, considering how working is going to be like in the next future. We consulted with our neighbors, or at least I sent a letter to them with the beforehand with all the information, and both have expressed no concerns. But I guess if they want to, they have to go through the official route.
Sure. Okay. And anything on the other application you'd like to say?
Martin, do you want to unmute?
You're still on mute, sorry.
Yes.
This could be a short meeting.
You're on mute, Martin. Turn it off.
Sometimes slow to respond.
There you are. There we go. We can hear you in glorious technical stereo.
Yeah, just that we've done it obviously for the community. I don't know what else to say really.
Okay.
Just that we're trying to improve the pub. So yeah.
Fabulous. No other questions then, are there, Fen? so I can
No.
move on.
Yeah.
Can we approve the minutes of the virtual extraordinary meeting of Tuesday, the 9th of February? Anyone got any amends, corrections, anything they object to?
No, all good. Thank you.
No.
Can't see any, so we'll take those as an accurate record. Item 5, Fen, to discuss any matters arising from the minutes of that meeting. Is there anything we need to think about?
No, just the educational information regarding dogs in the village is work in progress. But obviously I'm just about to hit year end and audit time. So I've pulled together a few bits and bobs, but there's nothing ready as yet because I'm kind of under a bit of time pressure.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you for that. Caroline, over to you for a report on district counselling activities.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep, cool. Okay. Hello, everyone. We had our annual budget meeting of West Berkshire Council last Tuesday. And unfortunately, they adopted the same approach as last year. They lumped all of the Liberal Democrat motions together and all of the Green ones together. And the problem with that is the leadership of the council is able to pick one thing from the two bits that they don't like to throw them out. So the Liberal Democrats and the Greens decided to walk out of the meeting at 10 o'clock at night because of the shutting down of debate, basically, because they're never prepared to take any amendments. They could earlier in the year if they wanted to look at our ideas and incorporate some of them. And to be quite honest, if they had any political nous, they would do that. But they choose to rule the council in an autocratic fashion, unfortunately. I don't know whether people know, but it's an executive-led council. So there's basically a cabinet of 9 Conservative councillors because they have the most seats. And they have a portfolio each, a bit like a cabinet, and they basically make decisions together. Whereas councils that are committee-led involve much more input from backbench councillors from all parties. So the problem we have at the moment is the Liberal Democrats and the Greens and also the backbench Tories don't get much of a look in. And it is annoying to the backbench Tories as well. I've many conversations with them about that. So yeah, basically we didn't get any amendments and we were really keen to get money for Berkshire Youth because a lot of their money's been cut over the years by West Berkshire Council. We wanted more money for the food bank because they've been inundated with requests for help during COVID, but none of those were heard, alas. So we'll have to wait until next year and probably the year after that. So what else has happened? I've got quite a bit of casework at the moment, but to be honest, very little from East Ilsley. Most of it seems to be coming from Compton and Hampstead Norreys at the moment. So I've got the 6 parishes altogether, and it sort of ebbs and flows as to where the casework comes in from. I had an email today, I don't know if you've had a chance to read it yet, Fen, about the playground and about getting the money used up for the members' community bid.
I think Vicky's lost the plot a bit because I've already invoiced her on the 1st of September and we've received the funds into our account.
Okay, all right.
So the one I haven't invoiced for yet is the COVID recovery pond, £1,000. Because I've got nothing to justify the raising of an invoice yet. That should come later today. But yeah, I will resend her my invoice and confirmation that we got it in the bank tomorrow.
Great, thank you for that. There's still no news on Parish and the development of that. We've got Western Area Planning next Wednesday and it's not on the agenda. And to be quite honest, every time I look at the agenda every 3 weeks, I kind of breathe a sigh of relief that it's not on there. Because whilst we obviously want to redevelop a horrible brownfield site, at the same time, we know that it's going to have a big impact on the village. We're going to have a lot of construction traffic driving through. And also there's the ongoing issue about infrastructure and whether we'll actually get any money locally to expand the doctor's surgery and so on. So I think when the time comes, we'll have a pretty big fight on our hands. But at the moment, there's absolutely zero news from the planning department about that. I think that's it from me.
Thanks, Caroline. Anyone got any questions as such? Caroline, the only thing I just quickly wanted to ask, is there anything from any of the other villages that you think might be pertinent to us particularly, or any issues they've got we should be aware of? Or
not that I can think of, no. A lot of it's just to do with like problems on particular roads, and it's not necessarily generic stuff that's applicable to everybody else. So, you know, it's potholes, it's construction, traffic, it's dog bins, it's, you know, planning, it's all kinds of things. Actually, one thing I would mention, community infrastructure levy. There's been a lot of controversy around this at the moment. There's a lot of cases across West Berkshire where people have been stitched up and have had to pay thousands of pounds.
Yeah, I saw this.
Yeah, there's been a lot of letters in the Newbury Weekly News about it the last 2 weeks. So if you know of any cases where people have been charged a lot of money for community infrastructure levy because they haven't got the right paperwork in within the deadline, do let me know, because I'm currently working with a Conservative backbencher and the deputy leader of the Liberal Democrats, and the three of us are going to try and organise a cross-party campaign about this.
But I'm right in thinking this is one where if effectively almost, if you tick the wrong box and you normally wouldn't be liable, you become liable.
Yeah. And often there's 2 or 3 forms to fill in, and sometimes people don't realise that. And rather than the council saying you haven't filled this in properly, you need to go back and do it again, they just don't bother to say anything. They go quiet and they wait until the deadline's gone, and then they say, oh, you owe us a load of money now. So sharp practice, basically. So we're going to, there's something that we want to take up.
Again, I don't know if it's relevant, but I think, you know, if this comes back, it would be really interesting to talk to other councils and say, you know, we really not, well, I personally, I think that's an appalling practice. I think it should always be, you know, the council should be there to try and help residents, not stitch them up in terms of, oh, you failed to tick a box, so therefore we're going to fine you and normally you wouldn't be paying. It should really be, you know, the other way around, going, are you sure you weren't meant to fill this in, and because we don't think you'd normally be liable.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see whether the councillors are interested in sort of maybe jointly just sending something to planning, going, we're not really happy with this. I mean, obviously it's down to the planning team and the executive to change this, but it would seem a really straightforward change to take it from default penalisation to default check.
Yeah.
Because it is thousands of pounds, isn't it?
It is thousands of pounds. Yeah, some people have been stung for 20 or 25 grand.
Wow.
Which when they're not, when in the normal course of events they wouldn't be liable for it, seems hugely unfair. Iniquity is my word of the month.
Yeah, no,
in
it is terrible.
whatever form it comes in. So so feel free, if any of the other councils in your patch are sort of worried by this, maybe we'll bring it back to the council to see whether collectively we should write to West Berks and say perhaps you should have a look.
Yeah, because the problem at the moment, the process is the Liberal Democrat deputy leader put a motion to council and then it gets delegated to an advisory group, and the advisory group's confidential and we're not allowed to talk about what happens at them. So they have a discussion and then the executive member for planning makes a decision, and then a paper goes to the executive, which is the cabinet, and basically rubber stamps what the planning portfolio holder thinks of that particular issue. So basically we don't get to vote on it. So this is why we often have to resort to the press, unfortunately, because it is literally the only way to embarrass the council into taking any action.
And would I be right in thinking that the planning lead councillors, the member for Cheveley, or is it somewhere else?
Yes, you would be correct.
So they're virtually next door neighbours. So perhaps we should contact Cheveley Parish Council and see what their views are. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, it's quite interesting actually that there's 2 of them in that ward, and they often differ quite radically when it comes to planning applications. So I don't know whether that's tactical. They're trying to ride 2 horses when it comes to the election, because one of them can say we oppose something and one can say we supported something. But there does seem to be a difference of opinion there. So it's quite possible one of the Cheveley councillors would be happy to work with us on this.
I think we will probably take the view currently that it is more oversight than deliberate action, but it just doesn't strike me as something that councils, district councils, should be benefiting from the mistakes of its residents. So maybe we can do something collectively with some of the councils. Thank you, Caroline. If there's no other questions, let's move on to the presentation from Manor Oak Homes. And who's doing this for us, Ven?
Well, I thought Jeff Armstrong was here, but I can't see Jeff.
It's going to be a very short item.
Yeah, and there's no one in the waiting room.
Okay. Shall we come back to that,
Yeah,
or move it to the next meeting if no one arrives?
yeah, sure.
Okay, item 8, to discuss COVID-19 pandemic coming out of lockdown and surge testing. I think, Fen, you've got most of the information on this, haven't you?
Yeah, it's just to let you know that we have prepared a group of volunteers that could help if surge testing is needed in our village. They're from our emergency response team. West Berks were just seeing if we had the capacity and whether or not, should this arise, we would be able to support. And I just wanted to confirm that, yes, we are. If it ever does go down that road, we will receive free full training and PPE. So there's going to be no additional expense to us. But it very much is a what if scenario rather than a this is coming scenario. So just to let you know, really, that it's in hand. But
this relates to, for those who don't know, this is if they find presumably one of the variants in and around East Ilsley that they're worried about, as I think they did in other areas. They went and tested everybody who lived there to see whether it had spread or not, because the Brazilian variant is particularly nasty. It's 270% more transmittable than the original one. You don't end up with as much resistance even if you've had COVID. So this sort of thing really could be quite important because if you have one of these cases, it will spread much faster and the outcomes aren't great. But fortunately, the vaccination programme is proceeding at pace. Anyone got any questions on that? No? Okay, we're into the excitement of the evening. The planning application. So if we start off with 00319, which is Hobland House. Has everybody had a chance to look at the plans?
Yeah.
Anyone got any questions, objections?
Nothing.
No.
Okay. So then it looks like we've got no objections to that. Are we minded to, what is it, support?
So support or object, and then comments. So we'll obviously tick the no objections support box. Does anyone have any comments they want me to add?
No, it's fine.
Okay. Excellent. Well, that was fairly rapid. So that's quite good. Planning application 00134, Crown and Horns, public house. Same again. Everyone's seen the plans, hopefully?
Yeah, it's worth bearing in mind that this is retrospective.
Okay.
Because the outdoor wooden structure is in situ in the car park. If you have been on the portal recently, you'll see massive amounts of support from residents in terms of them agreeing this.
And just for the sake of balance, Fen, have we seen any letters or anything, comments objecting?
Two.
Okay. And how many roughly in support? Because I haven't seen the portal.
I can tell you, hang on, I've got it up on my screen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. So
a close run thing, 23-2. Right, everybody. So if there's no questions,
I have a tiny thing. It's news just in. So it's come from Highways.
Go on.
It appears that West Berks have a kind of formula of what they use for parking spaces. So they require 1 parking space for every 3 to 5 square meters of floor area. Highways have said this it's difficult to see how highways could support this if there is a reduction in car parking spaces and it requires further clarification. But I don't believe, I think they've only lost one disabled car park space, which they have relocated to in front of the tree.
Yeah, and I think for clarification for my benefit, as the highway is working on pre-COVID density of population, or are they working on during COVID? Because obviously, even if the pub is open, there would be a limit on the numbers of people. Therefore, the limit on the car parking, one would think, would alter. Do you know if their formula takes note of it?
It just says for A3 use, West Berks Council has one parking space for every 3 to 5 square metres. She hasn't commented on whether that's pre-COVID or during COVID. But Martin has got photos and plans that he's going to email into them tomorrow. So this only came through this evening, only was uploaded to the portal about 6 o'clock tonight. So he's going to answer all their questions tomorrow, but you know, they haven't lost car parking space, they've just relocated the disabled access.
So in light of the sort of new information, has anyone got any additional comments, questions, anything they'd like to say on this?
I've just got a question. Is there a different category for a public house there? Because that A3 is a restaurant.
They don't say. The other thing that was picked up as well by an opposer was, because obviously they live there, it's their home as well as their business. They have to obviously park their own cars in the car park. It's, you know, it's their land. And they have commented that perhaps them parking at their own house limits the number of spaces for patrons. But I think it's got down to a sort of nitpicky level.
Okay. So are there any comments from anyone else, or should we move to voting on whether to support or object? Okay, doesn't look like there's any comments. So anyone objecting to the application?
No.
Like it. All those supporting the application?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we can tick that through as supported. And any other comments that anyone would like to add to the application?
Well, as I've said to the guys at the Crown, I think what they've done is phenomenal, really, in this COVID period. And I think the construction doesn't take away, you know, in terms of the idea of car parking spaces. It's a minute question. It's a kind of a very, very sort of get out of jail card for those that are opposing it. So I'm in full support of it. I think what they've done is phenomenal. They've got the village backing, there's no question about that, both Facebook and through people filling in the portal. So I'm all for, let's get it sorted. It's already there, and maybe another one in the near future would be good too.
Yeah, I think I'll add to that as well. And even if you think it objectively, and regardless of how the guys have behaved through COVID, which we all agree is exceptional, I think that in a post-COVID world, I don't think we're going to change what we're doing for the next year or two at least. And in order to sustain the village, you know, and have the ability to have takeaway food and all the things that are supporting the village at the moment, you know, I don't think that they could sustain their business without doing something like this as well. So
Yeah.
even if people like Highways are blocking it for reasons of doing that 3 to 5 square foot for a certain usage or whatever, then I think that there should possibly be a campaign to kind of drive that through regardless, because they're not going to be able to sustain their business, because we're not going to be allowed to have the volume of people on premise inside the building that we had before. So we're going to be relying on outside activities for quite some time, I think. So.
But didn't the government actually give a bit more leeway to pubs having outdoor spaces because of that? they said there were planning permissions were more easily put through than it was before.
Yeah, I think I think that you're right. The government have agreed that places that don't have beer gardens are the exception here. And I think they're allowing alleyways and off-street areas to have alcohol served in the environment and have tables and chairs put out for people to eat because of the COVID restrictions. So I think there's precedent there as well.
I mean, the car parking is, I mean, when it opens, it's going to be more for local anyway, isn't it? For travelling. So I think, you know, I don't think they've got an issue.
Mike, you raised your hand.
Yeah, so obviously a couple of people objected to this. Is there a way that we can resolve their issues of why it is that they objected? I had a brief look. It was something to do with the parking, as in people parked in front of their house, I think it was. I think, is there any way that we can, because obviously, you know, it's good that the Crown Horns have, you know, as I said, I completely agree with all the comments that have been made. But what I'm thinking of is obviously those two people are thinking, great, well, you know, nobody's helped us or supported us. So is there a way that we can try and resolve their situation? And I don't know the answers.
Well, there is history between the opposers and the pub.
Right, I don't know anything.
Yeah, and there has been some a number of lines of communication which we're unable to resolve at present.
Oh, okay. Okay, so there's other things going on. I don't know. Sorry. Okay, right. I'm new, so you know.
That's fine. It's a good point, Mike. It's a good point to raise. You know, we've tried to mitigate between all parties if we possibly could. But yeah, there is history, and they are directly neighbouring the pub as well. So you can understand that would be that could possibly be a challenge. So.
Can I ask if did you want me to add on our as well as the comments that Brendan and Mike have given me, did we want to just reiterate the sort of work they've done in the community with the shop and the takeaway and the, you know,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should probably, I mean, object if you want to, anybody, but I think it should be around the sustainability of the business is what they've done. They've adapted significantly to kind of maintain, you know, having the pub, restaurant, you know, food outlet, whatever you want to call it, in the village. They've adapted what they were doing in order to try to maintain that. You can guarantee that they're not making anything like the revenue that they would have made in this period over the last year. But you know, the brewery and the guys have invested time, the brewery's invested money, they've developed it, and you know, I think that's a good thing for the village and the community.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Shall we move on to the next item? Okay. Item 10, to receive an update on the pond from our flood warden, Nick Watkins, including a review of the quotes for excavation and to agree on awarding the contract for work to begin in the next 3 months. Over to you, Nick.
You're on mute, Nick, I think.
For me, Zoom is very slow to respond, and I end up pressing the button twice and putting the microphone back on mute.
There we go.
Perfect.
There we go.
Yeah.
Mike, so, good evening, all. Thank you. Sorry for my late arrival. I was on another call. Yeah, well, interesting time to have a parish council meeting when there's a flood alert or on the cusp of a flood alert. Just on that issue, I know that Fen has had communication today vis-a-vis the electrical station setting the alarm off because of the increasing flood level. I think a large contributing factor is the amount of water that's going into the Crown. I know it's been difficult to keep them afloat financially during COVID, but we seem to be keeping them afloat with the water table rising. and they've been pumping out furiously. They've now got 2 pumps working, and you've only got to go around there to see the amount of water coming out. Of course, it's going into the pond. The pond is filling. Lovely and clear water, by the way. I noticed the pond looking so clear. And then the water is flowing down Hayden Lane, and I don't know if anybody's walked along to the end of Hayden Lane, but a lake has just appeared in the last couple of days, right at the end of the Hayden Lane walk up to Baker's Barn intersection. So that water table is rising there, but the water's flowing past down through Ian Wilson's field. And I did talk to Ian Wilson today, and he checked the field yesterday. It is free flowing, but he'll keep an eye on that. We've got heavy rain tomorrow forecast, pretty much all day. So Brendan, I'm sorry, but maybe the tree guys can't come and do their work tomorrow. I don't know. We shall see. So we could be alert. The groundwater levels are just at the risk zone. But going up Abingdon Road, normally you would expect to see Linky and various other people along Cottage all pumping out. There's nothing in Linky's basement, so whether the flood levels are just impacting where the Pang flows and not the immediate areas, I don't know. But the Crown was saying today when I went to talk to them that they pumped until May of last year. So the water does keep flowing. But we just got to keep an eye on the pond. It's not from looking at it today, it's not on the verge of overflowing, but it's getting high. It's getting high. So how much rain we get tomorrow and what impact that has, not immediately tomorrow, but the knock-on effect of that later on, we'll keep a very close eye on. But I know the volunteer group are on alert, and people have got diesel ready for pumps, and we're on standby to do whatever we need to do. But let's hope we don't have a 2014 scenario in the village. So that's the kind of where we are with the flood warnings. I know Fen contacted Sam. Sam sent me a note last week to say there are no flood warnings at all for the area. But I don't know whether you've had a response from Sam tonight, Fen.
So Sam is out of the office until next Monday. I forwarded it to the emergency planning team, who emailed me at 3:30 saying that there is currently no groundwater alert in place for the Pang Valley, which is good, but sadly spaces which were traditionally not living spaces, such as basements and cellars, are at risk. We have been sent an update about the groundwater area in the area today, and the nearest borehole to East Ilsley is on the turn and levels are starting to drop. However, it will take some time. They've then given me a very detailed weather forecast up until Saturday, but they have said, thanks for letting us know about the conditions. They will be watching and waiting to see what actually comes our way over the next few days and assess the impact then.
Okay.
So that's the duty manager of emergency planning.
Well, certainly when I wrote my flood warning report, there was no flood warning alert at all for the area, and Sam had just written to me that day. But you can all keep an eye on the water levels, and if you look at that website. But we'll keep an eye on it, and Fen and I just work closely and make certain that if we are at any risk, we will alert people accordingly. Sorry,
Nick, one quick question on this, because I having seen the pics from the 2000 flood and I think 2007, where the water from the pond came literally over the top, it flooded the I don't know what the road would be called, but the bit right next to the pond.
Church Road, I think it's called.
Yeah. Is that in any way controlled or limited by the amount of water that actually get down the rectory cutoff, or does it just get to the point where that will be running at full capacity and it will still be over the top of the pond? I'm just wondering if there's any mitigation, should we ever need to, of diggers or Lord knows what else or something, because at some points there has been a situation where the silt by the little bridge that goes into the rectory was actually where it was such a pinch point that, you know, even if there was a huge volume of water, it was easier for it to go over the top and into Church Road than it actually was down the channel. So I just wonder if
it's a good point, Andrew, and we do check that little culvert down the side there. It's not as clear as it could be. It'd be ideal to get that cleared at some stage, but it's certainly not appearing to pose any threat. But if it did, we can get in there and actually clear that culvert quite easily. But at the moment, I went out and checked this afternoon. I walked all the way along, and it is flowing. But you can always tell when the water levels are coming up, because again, I drove down Abingdon Road the other day, and Maxted's fields are now showing.
The water meadows are back.
Yeah, the water meadows are back now. As long as his area keeps clear and his culvert is kept clear, then we're okay. But yeah, I did notice on Sunday, Monday, that the water meadows were coming back quite strongly. So indicative the water levels are high, but as I said in my note, thankfully we didn't have too much snow. That always adds to the increased water level.
Because people don't realise there's a huge delay, isn't there? With raining in January, and it doesn't sort of reach us until March.
Yeah, no, it flows down from West Ilsley and gradually makes its way here. So anyway, that's where we are on the flood alert. And thank you everybody who's responded to Fenn's notes saying be on guard and alert and getting petrol or diesel for pumps, etc., which is great. Let's hope we don't have to use it. On to the other issue, which of course, if we'd got this issue sorted earlier, we probably wouldn't have so much of an issue with the pond right now. But thanks to Fenn's good officers, as we all know, we have secured some funding from West Berkshire to support the clearance of the pond, which means we can now go ahead and do the work. We have enough funds in reserve, plus what Fenn secured through the West Berkshire Fund, to do the work. And Fenn's got two, I think probably three quotes. I don't know if you got three yet, Fenn, but certainly two quotes to do the work, both which are within budget. We are looking for a third because we need a third quote. But the issue we've come up against is timing. The original plan was that we could take the silt and let it dry in Ian Wilson's field, which he very kindly offered us. Unfortunately, we're now in the growing season, and that field is no longer available to us until the autumn. So if we were to carry out the work before the autumn, the question is, where would we put the silt to dry? And we can't cart it away. I understand, Fenn, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we can cart it away wet because of the potential of toxification. Now, I don't know if we've done the test yet. Is that me who's bumped it? Somebody's beeping away there. I don't know whether we've done the toxicity test yet. We were talked about getting something done, but it's unlikely that we will get away with just carting it away when it's wet. So either we can come up with an alternative solution and put the silt somewhere else, but I'm bereft as to where we could do that safely, or we have to wait until the autumn.
Is there any option with the chaps from Dyson who did seem very keen to help, which is sort of a little bit further along? Because the one advantage I suppose we've got with the issues with flooding is that the bottom of their field that's adjacent to Ian's field, from an agricultural point of view, is very limited because it floods so much. So they can't actually grow anything there. And I just wonder whether the costs of potentially getting it 300 yards further along and into the bottom of their field might be the cheaper option than something super drastic. I can't even think of anything, but they did seem quite keen to help if Ian can't help, or perhaps we could rent his field.
Well, I mean, I did say to Fen maybe Dyson beeswax would be an option to talk to, and whether or not they would be willing to let us do that. And maybe we could talk to James and see if he's got somewhere available. But unless anybody else has got any other ideas as to where we could do it, I'm sure I could ask Pete Godfrey and I'd get a million responses as to where I could dump it. But I'm not sure I want to engage in that conversation.
One thing we need to consider is I spoke to our 2 contractors that visited end of last summer. Both of them, their diaries are ram-packed. Actually, one of them can't get to us till the autumn anyway, because he's so busy. The other has given us, he said he can't get to us within 3 months. And then the third and final group, they are calling me tomorrow to arrange a time to meet at the pond. But when I spoke to him this morning, he was on site, hard at work. So they are all just so booked up. So it may all end up coinciding with autumn when Ian lets us use the pond, but it obviously doesn't alleviate the immediate issues we've got.
No, but even if we could get going in April, May, then it's not going to alleviate the immediate issue. So I think what we need to do is probably approach beeswax, see if they can help us out, and also look at other potential areas and see where we could possibly put it up. But I'm at a loss to think where we could do it, and go from there. But I think realistically, we're now looking at an autumn date for getting this work done. I don't think we're going to get it, sadly, so we're going to get it done pre-summer.
Right. Anyone got any comments or suggestions that are repeatable about where the silt can go? So I think.
Sorry, Andrew, I was just about to say, I think there's probably with arable farming though, there's probably some fields that aren't going to be used for this season. So it might be that Dyson do have some part of their property where they could potentially help us out with this. So it's obviously worth asking, it's worth canvassing anybody that's got land in the area.
I agree. I think we think we can't take it very far.
Yes.
You can't take it on the public highway, so it's basically got to go down Hayden Road.
Yeah.
Right, okay. We're limited. Okay, thank you.
We are limited to, good thought, Mike, but we are limited to where we can go with it.
Okay.
I had put as well in item 10 that we would decide on who to go with, but actually realistically we can't do that because A, we haven't got anywhere for this to go yet, and B, we haven't got our third quote yet. I had 2 weeks I've chased a company in Aldershot, and I finally spoke to the chap today who had passed it on to his colleague, and his colleague hadn't bothered to call me back. So
well, that's a good start.
Yeah, so really unhelpful. However, what is good is the 2 guys that came to visit us last year are holding their prices. So the quotes we got in September last year don't change. Both of them are caveated, and that is the cost of the removal of lorries. One of them said, 11 lorries. The other has said, I have no idea, but it's about £350 a lorry. So the caveat to that is once they start digging, once they start excavating, they can then see just how much lorry loads they're going to be. So that price could go up, it could go down, but as Nick pointed out at the beginning of his report, because of what West Berkshire have given us through the SIL funding, there is a small pot of money that we could absorb some of that extra cost if there is going to be more than 11 lorries loads. But it's just well, this is definitely going to be on another agenda when we've got the 3 quotes and we've got a field sorted.
I think we're going to have to arrange an extraordinary meeting, because it's just too big a sum of money to make decisions without all the facts. I suppose we could speak to HS2 and see if, or Crossrail, see if they want to extend where Crossrail's coming in, because they have lots of lorries.
Just a note about testing as well. All of our contractors build testing in to their quotes. So everybody that has come to see us thus far, a line item on their quote is for the testing. So we would have visibility of what is in there prior to any excavation work. So an additional test on top of it is not necessary.
Okay. And of course that keeps it current, because if you test it now, you might run into a situation where if we don't get it done for 5 months, they say that test is no longer valid.
Exactly.
So yeah, okay. So Fen, I think once we get, I'm kind of thinking that once we get this third quote in, we should probably arrange a very, very quick meeting and potentially press the button on this, because if the third people are being so efficient, I think that merely just answers our purchasing process of having 3 quotes, and we can probably make a sane decision quite quickly. So I'd be very keen to push that.
Yeah, well, he's going to, tomorrow we're going to arrange a time. So Nick, I'll be in touch with you on the phone to see if I can tie up the meeting with you as well, if that's all right. Because he obviously can't.
Could you also get in touch? Sorry, Fen, could you get in touch with the Dyson folk?
Yeah.
And see where that went, because when we met them last year, they were very amenable to the idea. And I think if it does actually come down to, it's a situation where what we thought was available now isn't, because of a farm production point of view.
Yeah.
It can only help. And as I said, there's a decent bit of that field on the other side that is of little value at all. At least from a production point of view, so one would hope they could look quite favourably. But I just think if we can get some pace on this, at least we'll be able to tell the village we are taking action, especially in the light of if the next week or so we end up with slightly wet feet around the village.
Sure.
Good to know that we're doing something about it. So yeah, if we could do that. Nick, thank you very much as ever for all your work and efforts on this and the report. It's really greatly valued, and days and nights like tonight when we're expecting this to start making an impact just show how important it is. So honestly, thank you very, very much.
Pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Thanks, yeah.
That's brilliant.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Righty ho. Item 11. Consider making a donation to West Berkshire Citizens Advice Bureau, which is being fund matched by the Good Exchange. So I presume every pound they get in, they get an extra pound back. Any other information you've got for us, Fen?
So the chief officer wrote to me just to ask if we would be prepared to make a donation. They want to continue to help the people of West Berkshire. Although they're part of the national service, they are a local charity and all their funds must be raised locally to ensure sustainability. Because of lockdown, they changed the way they provided their service within 24 hours and still supported their clients. Obviously, it's not face-to-face, but they're using phone, emails, and even letters as well with the specialist services. They just say any donation that we're able to make will support their service, and the Good Exchange is match funding. So she's just asked if I would ask you if you would consider a donation, whether or not you want to use S137. As it's.
Have we got any funding that's likely to run out as such in terms of S137 usage, or any odd situations like that?
No, because we get about 3,500 to spend in terms of budget per elector each financial year. We're coming to the end of this financial year and we're nowhere near that limit. And then obviously next year, the amount per elector goes up. So there'll be even more in the pot but we don't carry it over and we don't budget for it. It's just a power that we're allowed to spend it.
So, because my thought process being obviously with the budget changing on March 31, you know, is there something to be said for giving them a donation because it will fall into this financial year, and we lose the power to do so?
No, the power's renewed every financial year, and the amounts agreed by government and filtered down to us.
And have we got anything left in this year's budget for S137 in terms of what we thought we were going to allocate?
Well, no, because you don't budget for S137.
Okay.
It's not actually supposed to be included in your.
So where does it
budget.
come from in terms of for the financially inept like me?
So the amount we can give, the maximum amount, is agreed by the UK government. So it's £8.32 or something like that per elector.
Yeah.
Obviously, that value is multiplied by the number of people on our electoral roll, and that's the maximum amount we can spend using that power in the financial year.
Yeah.
So far we have done, was it £150 we gave to British Legion?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We did £100 to the library service.
Yeah.
The Star Rescue Animal Charity, £200. That actually came out of the Presswell Field earmark reserves because it strictly wasn't for the whole benefit of the community. So we've got bandwidth within our power of S137.
So how much is the question? I've no issue with us giving it. It's the point is to try and nail down what do we think we want to donate. Is 100 quid? Is it 150? Is it £1,000? What do we think?
So it certainly isn't 1,000. But yeah, I mean, so I understand the power, but what I'm not understanding is that if we decide to spend 100 quid tonight, is it?
It comes out of general reserves, but I allocate it on the finance software as S137 donations.
Okay, so I'm with you. So effectively, it would come out of what we've got in the kitty. So yeah, so it's down to the council really to decide whether we want to, whether we think the CAB is of value and should be supported, whether we think this will create a sort of annual call or not, or whether you think because of COVID and the work they've done through COVID, you know, they deserve a little bit of help. Anyone got any thoughts?
Yes, I think they should get something.
I think in COVID times, it's probably worth doing. If we weren't in COVID times, then yes. I mean, I'd want to look at it in a bit more detail because, you know, with all of these institutions, there is money sitting behind them. So because of COVID and the lack of ability to fundraise, we're being told, then if we have money put aside, then I don't see an issue why we don't give a donation.
Okay.
To it.
Yeah, I think the same. I think yeah, COVID precedent. I think Andrew from.
Okay. Well, I think that does give us some latitude and probably gets us off the hook for lots of people coming back and saying, "Well, what did you do this for? What did you do that for?" Because I know from the work that we do that CAB have played a pretty pivotal role in terms of helping folk out, and they've kept going and what have you, and they're quite important to all sorts of different people, but obviously not all the time and not everybody uses them. So
just as an example, Greenham Parish Council donated money to them. I'm on the Good Exchange at the moment and can see what they've raised. They've raised 34,000 so far, but they need 165. So
wow.
Yeah.
And what did Greenham give?
£5,000.
Blimey.
And you said my £1,000 request was off the radar.
Well, it is if you look at the population size.
Yeah.
Greenham's a little bit bigger.
Yeah, that's true.
I was thinking 100. I thought 150 was very generous.
Well, I think I think again in sort of, you know, where we're looking at with S137 and things like what we do with fireworks and sheep fair and stuff like this, it probably helps the villagers, but isn't for the direct benefit of the village. So I think we can certainly do something. I just think we've just got to be mindful that, funnily enough, it isn't about, well, we could spend X or we could spend Y. It's about supporting the CAB, but I think without going mad. So I think, you know, if it's 150 quid, that seems reasonable to me, because that becomes 300. How many villages have we got?
What are we? 326, I think.
So yeah, so something around that sort of figures, you know, a little bit of a contribution from almost all the village when it's fund match. So that seems quite reasonable to me. So I don't know if you want to make it 175 to give them 350 quid.
Right, well, I need to see proposers, seconders and hands in favour.
Would someone like to propose an amount and whether we do this?
175.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, who's seconding that?
I think
Yeah.
Mike did.
Okay,
All in support?
All in favour. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm good.
Splendid. So
Okay.
we can all go home feeling we've done a good thing. So that's good.
Thank you. I will do that online through match funding then tomorrow, and then I will register that as an F137 spend.
If you could. Item 12, to discuss the launch of the active travel plans for enhanced walking and cycling infrastructure in West Berkshire, and decide on whether we should highlight any key areas in East Ilsley. Anyone got any thoughts?
Have you all had a look at this?
I think our paths are good.
So this is more about, they've launched something called a heat map, which is an online map of West Berkshire, and people are allowed to put on comments about things that they think would help and benefit them in the area. So for example, here in Hampstead Norreys, when you go up towards Ash Hampstead along Wild Court, we have pavement and then nothing, and then pavement, and the nothingness is on a blind bend. And so if you're on a particular circular walk, you walk on the pavement, then it stops, and you are literally walking round a copse of trees in the road, which is 60 miles an hour. So the opportunity in Hampstead Norreys has been, you could comment on that section and say, you know, this is dangerous for pedestrians, for cyclists, for horse riders, etc. We need a pavement, or you need to cut into the copse to give people space to walk through. So it's really whether or not we think that there is any areas in East Ilsley that we would like to highlight would make travel easier and safer, whether it's walking or cycling or running, anything like that.
Mike, you had your hand up? Or is it gone again? Definitely saw a hand. No?
Yep, wasn't me.
I just want to say this is something I think we should do, because one of the things we've had for a while, although be careful what you wish for, there's an awful lot of highway spoil on the road to Compton either side, but the road itself is really dangerous to cycle or walk on, and your only alternative is to go up to the Ridgeway and along the concrete path. And funnily enough, the cycle route from Newbury to East Ilsley includes a section on the A34, and that's where the official route takes you as you come through Beedon, which, although I'm not a cyclist, doesn't strike me as the sanest thing anyone could ever do. Whereas if you could cycle through effectively the back route, get to Compton, and then safely cycle to East Ilsley, that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. And of course, one of the interesting things when you look at the COVID statistic of fatality rates is that countries who've got an issue with exercise obesity are the ones with the highest death rates, and the ones with the lowest have got the lowest death rate. So, you know, things like this really do start to matter. So that's one I'd certainly like to put in, is whether there's, and also I think rather than just in isolation for East Ilsley, whether there's any kind of connecting up of, you know, routes that could go elsewhere that might, because I suppose you could say the same with getting to West Ilsley. You know, the road is pretty dangerous, and you've got effectively highway spoil on either side of the road, and you do sort of wonder, could they not come up with a safer cycle path, footpath, that you really should be able to go from Newbury to West Ilsley or to us or to Compton without having to go on the A34. But Fen, how do we do this?
So I've sent you all the email. And it's on our Facebook page. But there's a link that takes you to the heat map, and you basically click with your mouse on the area that you've got a problem, and the comments box pops up, and it asks you several questions. So things like, you know, identify who this is dangerous for. So we've identified, you know, pedestrians, cyclists, dog walkers, and it says, you know, what do you think you would make this better? Then you have a tick list, and then there's a sort of a free text box, and then you save the comment, and then they email you to confirm and validate that your comment is not from a bot. Right. And as soon as you've clicked confirm, then your comment appears on the heat map, and the consultation runs from sort of end of Feb until July. And the idea is that when you log on to the heat map, you should see all of these comment boxes all over West Berkshire, all of these little ideas that people have had about making active travel easier and safer in the area. And that all goes into consultation. They have got 5 key strategies, which aren't relevant to us, our areas at all. It's sort of Calcott feely way, you know, travel, cycling to school programs, that kind of thing. But there is extra funding there, and, you know, I suppose if more people are identifying dangerous areas, that's going to be something they're going to look at, and it can't hurt to log something if you think it's a good idea. It's really easy, and I've done it myself, so I'm really happy to do that.
And the other one we've got that we should probably put out for sort of general views was this footpath up to the Illsleys, which never, I think, got finished formally. We put the sort of intermittent path from Sunrise down, but there was this scheme about 25 years ago to create a safe walking route to the Illsleys, and I think most of it's been done, but there might be the odd bit missing.
So the bit that bothers me, well, you have to cross the road at the allotments, don't you, and go down the back, where there's lots of poop, and then you come out at Hayden Lane, don't you? And then you go up the side of Ian's Field.
You can go that way,
at Kissingate by along
or
the
you
side
can go
side.
Back up Church Hill.
So it's either up the side of the field, or it's up. So it's kind of there, and it's the route I use if I park at the allotments and need to come.
So we're kind of nearly there on there. And the only other one I can think of that I do sort of sometimes wince at is people walking to the Millennium Green, down the side of Ian's Field, because funnily enough, there used to be a bus stop there. I don't know if people can remember. There was a bus stop right outside that barn, and it was just in the road. And again, it's one of those things where you think, you know, if there was 40 yards of pavement, because there's pavement walking up the high street and then round to the school, but the pavement doesn't continue onto Millennium Green. And I don't know whether... Again,
so when you go up, and then you get to Puzzle Meadow, don't you?
Yes, and there's nothing by Puzzle Meadow.
Nothing past Puzzle, and then you turn left.
And then you're into the Millennium Green through the other Kissing Gate. So
Yeah, but there's no footpath there, and it's, you know, cars zoom up there to
Yeah,
join
so we've
the
got
A34.
yeah, so we've got the Kissing Gate exit straight
Yeah.
onto the road, and for 40 yards worth. And also, it would probably, you know, have an impact on the cars. It might slow folk down a little bit if there's only a dramatically narrow the actual road. So there's something else. But I think it'd be really interesting if folk are talking to anybody, if they come across anything else where they think, you know, for want of this, you know, either cycling, walking could be massively improved. As I said, I think the problem we've got as a village is if you don't drive, you're a bit stuck, because we know that the public transportation is limited, but what else are you meant to do? You know, safely walking to West Ilsley is difficult. Safely walking to Compton's difficult. I mean, if you could walk safely to Compton without going up onto the Ridgeway, I don't know, maybe people would walk to the shop. You know,
Fen,
but
is it villagers? So is it villagers that we need to be pushing this to get as many people within the village to
Absolutely.
propose?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've sent it to Sally for the communicator.
Right.
It's obviously on our Facebook page, which I posted to the 2 groups. But yeah, the idea is West Berks need, when they say our help, they mean residents' help.
in
Yeah,
terms of
brilliant.
broadcasting it, what have you.
Yeah.
And the other thing, Fen, would be helpful in future is if on the agenda we've got a link to things like this, can we whack the hyperlink
Yeah. Okay.
on the agenda, or kind of, you know, supporting here's where you go,
Yeah.
because, you know, people like me are very lazy. Whereas if it's put in front of me, I might actually do it. Mike,
No, can I add one? I think one
you can.
sort of related to what we're talking about, but it might need to fall into another bucket. I've been walking a lot lately, and I come out of my house, Sheepdown, and go up the Abingdon Road, which is a 60-mile-an-hour road. We're very lucky that there is a pavement on one side, but most of the pavement is now part of the verge. So the verge has kind of crept across at least half of the tarmac area that is the pavement. And I went up there today. My daughter, she's 8, on her bike, and somebody was coming the other way. So she was ahead of me, and before I could stop her, she went onto the road and then tried to go past this person who was walking down, you know, because there was no space for her to pass with a dog walker there. And I'm thinking that, one, we need to sort out the verge element and clean up the pavement. That would be really useful. But whether there could be a cycle path going north on Abingdon Road on that left-hand side, because the majority of vehicles are only coming down that carriageway. It's only farm vehicles that are going up. So if occasionally a farm vehicle needed to go onto the cycle path for another vehicle to pass, that wouldn't be too much of an issue. But maybe, because that's the only bit of flat land we've got in the village area for people to learn to ride bikes, or for people to ride bikes without overexerting themselves on hills, etc. So, and I noticed a lot as well of mums and dads pushing pushchairs and using that area as well. So once you've got a buggy and a bike and a dog walker, there is nowhere to go other than to step onto a 60-mile.
Fen, and the other thing on the same road is the footpath steps on the other side of the road, just past the village sign, or very close to the village sign, which has always terrified me, because I don't think there's any pavement there, is there?
No, there's not.
So again, as you come down the very steep footpath, you effectively are straight onto the road.
Where are we? Fiddler's Lane or Abingdon Road now?
Abingdon Road.
Abingdon Road, just past the 30-mile-an-hour signs. There's a footpath that cuts.
It's quite steep up the hill.
Yeah.
Goes up the hill to the east.
Is it the one that goes?
West, because it's Blackstead's land.
It's the one I took sorry. It's the one I took photographs of when we're trying to find places to put the signs.
Is it the one that goes up to the Ridgeway and the Downs?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It goes up to the Gallops and then up to the Ridgeway.
Yeah.
So again, you know, that's the kind of thing where you think 20 yards worth of pavement or something, because it becomes pavement as it gets to the houses, I think. Sure, there's pavement on that side of the road.
No, there's not until you get down to opposite
Besser
the
and
back
John's.
entrance to the farm. Yeah, that's where it turns into pavement, right the way down there. It's all verge. If you go past the first half a dozen houses,
Okay.
the village, it's all verge. Yeah.
So again, you know, I think there's little projects like this where, you know, we've got plenty of spoil, you know, and either let's turn it into flowering verges, which is the other nice thing we could do, or make use of it. And especially I think if there's schemes like this, but I think one of the things that's really important is if you can connect villages up, you can connect communities up. You're not going to get people exercising if it's dangerous or muddy. But yeah, the only thing that might happen then is they tried to get the school bus stopped about 15 years ago by saying that children could safely walk to the downs by going up to the ridgeway and along the concrete path. And it turned out it was something like 2.93 miles, which is within the limits of you walking. But the then said councillors received so many letters of complaint, they decided against doing it. But that's not to say they wouldn't do it again. So if we do create a footpath to the downs, then everyone's children may end up walking to school rather than getting the bus.
Is that one there, Fen?
Yeah, there you go. Thanks, Mike.
There's the speed limit. Can you see the two bits of wood here?
I
on the left?
can. Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Is the footpath, so it's just there's nothing there.
Wowzers, that's dangerous.
Oh, it's super dangerous. It's utterly blind for both the person coming down and also for the car coming towards you. Yeah, I can see. So
you don't get pavement. This is not pavement. This is people's driveways, effectively, or dropped curbs until you get right the way down.
But I presume that those pieces of grass highways, do we think, or are they owned by the folk?
Don't know.
Okay. I'm guessing it's highways, but that doesn't mean to say we need to tarmac things over. But
and that's we should point there about the verge becoming part of the pavement. So half of that pavement is missing.
Let's get street care onto that, Fen.
Yeah.
We know how effective they are at clearing footpaths. Thanks, Mike. That was really helpful. Oh, the wonders of technology, I tell you. So I think we've got some interest in that, which is nice. So thank you, everyone. Let's see if we can get other villagers to comment, because you never know, if we got lots of villagers to comment, they might actually do something.
Yeah, well, what we could do is I could put all of those comments on the plan, and before we submit it, actually sort of do a proposal and share with the village and say, this is what we've identified. Are there any
Have
others?
we missed anything?
Yeah.
Do you think it's a good idea? Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you. Item 13, to present to the Councillor Clark's report. All yours, Fen.
Thank you. Not much really to talk about. Obviously, you've seen the finance report for February, so it's quite a light spend month for us. Just shy of £1,000, including a S137 donation. And we obviously purchased the road salt for icy conditions. Just shy of 11.5k in the current account. Deposit account remains unchanged for a number of months. We're no longer receiving interest due to the Bank of England base rate. So, but that's just there, and everything's absolutely fine. We are coming up to year end, so I've got lots of tasks coming up very soon. But our finance package matches everything identical on our bank. I'm not worried about any anomalies, and this will be my third time of doing this, so I'm feeling pretty confident we're going to go into year end and internal audit absolutely fine. We will be going to external audit again this year because of the grants received. So yeah, just to let you know, there will be an additional cost, but we have budgeted that for that, so don't worry. Right, my first thing, you saw it all today, as it only came in today, but it's the settlement boundary review. Now we have got 6 weeks to consult on this, and the proposal was that we have a separate ad hoc meeting to discuss this in full. We haven't got time tonight to pick it apart. We don't know the intricacies of why they've moved some boundaries and why they've extended some boundaries. And I think Brendan wants to do a bit of research so he can understand why that's happened. And then we can all talk about it and if we want to proceed. So it's just really to check, are you okay to do that?
Sounds very sensible because things like that don't change very often.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll look at the consultation period. I'll propose some dates, and Brendan and I will find out the info we need so that we're all informed, and the public need to be involved as well.
Fen, is there any way we might be able to combine that with our extraordinary meeting if we do have to?
That's no plan.
Vote through. So it's incredible having good people running things for us.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get we'll do pond at the same meeting.
Marvellous.
Right. This is a bit of a strange one that's come in. So it's from a chap called Stuart Higgins, who's the definitive map officer for the countryside department at West Berkshire. They have received something called a Section 31 Highways Act statement and plan for the Compton estate. And it's regarding the parishes of Compton and East Ilsley, submitted by Dyson. He's attached something called a CA17 notice, giving some more information. And essentially, this process enables landowners to protect their land against claims of additional public rights of way through ongoing public use. There are no effect on pre-existing public rights. So I went back to him and said, okay, I've never seen this before. I just want to check, am I understanding this correctly? So Dyson have submitted a plan of all the land they own between Compton and East Ilsley. Within 20 years, they have to submit a declaration which will protect the land they own, so no future footpaths can be identified and claimed as a right of way. Okay, that's it in a nutshell. So Stuart came back to me and said, yes, that's correct. So I'm not actually sure if there is anything here for us to do apart from maybe look and see if maybe West Berks have forgotten to put a footpath on. Because essentially if this goes through and it's all agreed and there is an old track that used to be there and is no longer there due to vegetation, it could just disappear. If Dyson have said, oh no, it's not there, you can't see it. It's a really funny one. I don't know what's best to do about it. I've never seen it before. Anyone ever experienced that?
Nope.
Not that particular scenario, but I am aware, because I was looking at it recently to do some walking around the area, that there is a very good online public rights of way map at West Berks that does detail all of the tracks, and they're all registered with codes. So
yes.
If you've not seen that before, I can put a link to it in the chat now.
No, because I have to use that when I'm doing all my reports. Yeah, that's the one I use.
In the chat now, and it is you can zoom in, zoom out, and move around and everything. So it would be good to have that to hand if we are comparing whatever Dyson are trying to lay down as fact.
Okay. Shall I share quickly with you what I've got, just so you can see?
Please.
Because there was a couple of footpaths got rid of in the last 10 years that related to where the A34 went. But to be honest, you know, one of them was 30 yards long and didn't go anywhere. It just went between two paths. So hardly a sacrifice.
Yeah. Can you see this, what I'm showing you on my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is all the land that Dyson bought up between East Ilsley, Compton and almost Hampstead Norreys. And And this is what they're submitting to say that, you know, no further rights of way can be added in this land. And that's kind of it, really. That's all I've been sent.
Without closer scrutiny, though, that does appear to be the routes that I was aware of. So,
Okay. Maybe if it's all right with you, I'm just going to stop sharing because it hurts my eyes looking at that map. If I just forward it all to you, if anyone's got a minute just to read it, and I'll show you what my response was and Stuart's reply. But he didn't seem to think that there was anything really we needed to do, but I thought I'd highlight it anyway.
I'm always slightly concerned when things like this happen because on one hand, you sort of, you know, I'm sure the landowners just, you know, looking after their interests, but you do sort of halfway wonder whether they've done better searching than us and think, oh, there's 4 paths that used to be here, but people don't use anymore or whatever. So it'd be good to do it from a point of view, or equally, I suppose, we can always, when we're talking to them about all sorts of things, say, that was a bit of an odd thing. What was that all about?
Yeah, I can do that when I speak to James.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there are a couple of anomalies and things that have, I think, that have been amended. So I think everybody gets directed down Churn Road now as you go across the top and head down towards. But there is a public right of way that is to the left on Dyson land there that has been in existence for quite some time. And there's another one as well. If you go from Churn Road at the top and then head down towards the railway bridge, not along the Ridgeway, but down the private road, there is actually a public right of way that goes through one of the fields there and people are diverted onto the track, but it is a private road. So we do need to make sure that we're being clear that there is still a right of way, regardless of how they've directed people, and make sure that we preserve the ability to walk them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, and equally, perhaps if there's anyone wants to ask any of our older residents if there's anything they're aware of that we might have lost.
Yeah.
It's just always worth knowing, and especially if they're talking about changing settlement boundaries and things like this as well, because it might become pertinent. Anything else, Fen?
Yeah, so as well as year end, March is also my allotment renewing time. I've sent some emails out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 current allotment holders want to continue with another year, which is brilliant. One's getting back to me tomorrow. I've had one person effectively hand his notice in. And there's one more person I'm waiting to hear back on. I have a waiting list of 2, and it looks like I might lose 2 plots. So potentially they will be full from the 1st of April.
Excellent.
I'll be preparing their agreements and invoicing for payment from 1st of April. I will need to buy some stamps so I could get them to send their agreements back to me, as face-to-face still isn't a good idea at the minute, if that's all right.
Okay.
Just a heads up as well, 1st of April, we'll be paying our annual ICO fee of £35 by direct debit. So that certificate has to go in with our audit. So as soon as that comes through, that's us covered for another year. And that's it from me.
Okay. Item 14, discuss matters for future consideration and for information. Fen, I can quickly think of one, which is the fact that we are meant to be doing meetings in public from, is it May the 1st?
No, from the 7th of May.
And I'm afraid I'm somewhat in disagreement with the government about this, because there are still so many things that it would be considered unsafe to do. And because our school hall is a fairly small place, I think we should consider, certainly for any meetings in early May, that we continue potentially as we are and reassess on a meeting by meeting basis, depending on where we are with pandemic numbers, case numbers, vaccination requirements, scientific information, because I think we've got a duty of care to certainly the clerk as an employee and to fellow councillors and residents in terms of putting them at risk by holding a meeting in public and making people who may have planning applications or something like that turn up to a meeting, whereas I'm quietly confident we're not individually infecting each other as we are. So I know we're awaiting government legislation on this, but I think we should pretty much stick where we are from a HSE point of view. I don't know if anyone else has got any views on this.
I think we agreed on WhatsApp that we would hold our annual meeting on May the 4th. So, and that would be again
Star Wars
online.
Day.
Yeah, that will be online, and that's our big annual meeting that we did last year. So that's going to cover us legally. So that officially our next parish council meeting will be on the 4th of May. We will have an ad hoc one in between to discuss these other items. I'll let you know the date. After that, we will obviously have audity type things to think about, signing of documents. But if I can get it all in for the 4th of May, we can do what we did last year, and I could bring things round and you can sign them on screen, and then I can come and pick them up. So yeah, I think we can be okay. I have emailed Kate and Kath at school with my concerns and the concerns of the additional cleaning requirements that will be needed in a school hall that's used for a bubble of children.
Yeah.
You know, they are well within their rights to say it's not safe for you to meet. In that case, we have no other option because we don't have anywhere else to go.
We're not allowed to use public houses.
Yeah, except in extenuating circumstances.
This is quite extenuating.
It is, but you know, obviously pubs are going to want trade in when they're allowed them in, and they don't want to lose out on space for us.
Yeah.
So it may be that we have to continue this way, because other that it's that or we sit in the playground.
If it's nice and sunny,
Yeah.
and we've got our sunscreen, that would be nice.
Well, I'll keep you posted, but yeah, if you could put in your diaries the 4th of May for annual meeting, and then we're covered legally.
Thank you. Anyone else got any points for future consideration or information?
Just in April, Mr. Jeffs is 90.
Wow.
I mentioned it before, but I don't know what if we should, or being ex-chairman himself, and he's been here a long time, whether we should do something, just even if it's just a card.
Yeah, we can do that. We got to chip in. There's no money. We can't spend public money on it. So if we want to do that, we need to chip in.
Well, even just an acknowledgement, I just think, you know, it doesn't have to be a prezi. He doesn't need anything, but I just think an acknowledgement of some kind.
Should we do something in the communicator? Because that's going to come out.
I think that would be good.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do something and send it to Sally then.
Yeah, I'll let you know the exact date. You did tell me, but I forgot. So I'll find out on Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. That's really kind.
My only additional thing we're going to be talking about it already, but when you have a look at the settlement boundary stuff, I've only done a little bit. I've only looked at it today and done a little bit of research on it as well. But there are, if you don't know this already, and I didn't know it, is that there are direct links with what is in your local plan and your settlement boundary. And if things are outside of your settlement boundary, then sometimes there are various levels of influence you can have over it. And as an example, on the new settlement boundary, things like Sheep Down, the offices, the office blocks there, the new development behind where I live, etc., is now being included in the boundary. So we would have more of a say as to any development that's going on there, but the development was already done. But things like Penn Meadow are still not included in the local settlement. So we would have less influence as to what happens in Penn Meadow, I think, if I'm reading everything correctly. So I think we should look at local planning rules and stuff like that as well when we're looking at. Most of the settlement boundary changes seem to make sense because they're to include, would appear, developments that have happened in the last 20 years, if you look at my area in particular, and some extensions of gardens and bits and pieces, so it looks right. But I think given that they're talking about arbitrary planning changes and allowing things to happen without going through planning permission and stuff as well, I think we need to be very careful as to what we're allowing and you know where we need to object to things and bits and pieces for further development in the area that's outside of our control potentially.
Just one more thing to say to Pedro, to say thanks to Pablo for doing the litter pick with Sam and Simon. It was great. We got quite a lot done. So
thank you. He had a lot of fun. He's asking me whether he has to come back every weekend. I don't tell him. Maybe I should. But you mentioning that maybe the pub maybe also needs some help. So I need to ask him to go and pop over and see.
Yeah, I think we've looked into that. Angelique said you can't help a business. It has to be a voluntary. So maybe there's plenty of things going on in the summer, so I'll get him working. Don't worry.
I can ask him to take all the mud from the pond. He's strong.
If you can
At a time.
If you can get a big straw.
Well, I know we've got planning. When the weather turns nice, we're going to be redecorating and repainting the bus shelter and the notice board. So if he's handy with a paintbrush, I'll get the lads down to help me and Tracy with that.
Finish the trip.
Oh, and the telephone box.
Oh yeah, no, Lee Graham's supposed to do that.
Well, yeah, we may have some new volunteers.
Yeah,
plenty of opportunities. As soon as the weather gets nicer, yeah, we'll be out and about doing some tidying in the village. So we'll give you a shout.
Brilliant. Thank you, and thank you, Tracy, for arranging the litter pick. That's really splendid. You've done some really good stuff. So it's really appreciated. Just one quick one, Fen, before we go to I presume our friends from Manor Oak Homes haven't shown up.
No, very disappointing. I'll email Jeff tomorrow and tell him off.
It was me with my conspiratorial feeling going, is this something to do with the settlement boundaries? But
yeah, well, maybe it's going to be helpful for us to get a scoop on that before Jeff presents.
Yeah, I think so, because it's obviously important. So if there isn't anything else, we'll go to the last item. One more. Oh, sorry.
We talked before about buying a couple of gazebos for the emergency response team to have some protection if the weather's awful and we're in a car park. Originally, they were on Argos for about £250 each, and these are the pop-up ones that have come up instantly in a carrot storage bag. Tonight, I went to check on them. They don't sell them anymore. But I have found a 3 metre by 3 metre pop-up gazebo for £89 from Dunelm.
Yeehaw.
Would you like, we've got earmarked reserves in the emergency planning fund. Would you like me to get them?
How many are we getting? 2? 3?
Yeah, 2, I reckon.
2.
Yeah.
All right, all in favour that I buy this on the credit card?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And I can do click and collect, and because they're in a nice storage bag, they can just go straight in the container and we're sorted.
Perfect.
Fab, thank you. £89 bargain.
Well done, Fen. Right, are we at our last item? Excellent. Yep. So item 15, receive further questions or comments from members of the public. Are there any questions or comments from members of the public? Marvellous. In that case, I'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you, everybody. That was really helpful. There was some really good stuff, and we really appreciate everyone giving their time up to do this. It really matters. And we've got some big stuff to do with the pond and things like this, and hopefully no one will get any calls about emergency water situations, but if anyone can do any rain dances to stop it raining, that would be very helpful.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.